right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy show, the recap show, the After the Bell show. I am your host. I am Keith Shillan. I'll be joined in a minute by the senior editor of SureDog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Before we get to that, I got to say that this show is brought to you by the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and also the SureDog Radio Network. Make sure you check out Loudmouth MMA with all the fine shows they put out. And, of course, the leading MMA website in the world, SureDog.com. Ben, we are recapping UFC Fight Night. I don't know the number. I sit through this every week.
UFC on ESPN 16 or UFC Fight Island 4, UFC Fight Night, Holm versus Aldana. It has a million names. Who gives a damn which one we use? Because not to spoil anything, since we'll be giving this card a letter grade at the end, but I have the feeling that if this card were a student, it would be in summer school.
Yeah, like this card is gonna be one of those ones like we all kind of forget about. It's like that. I'm sure there's teachers. You know, you teach in a public school for 30 years. You're not gonna remember all your students. Like this is gonna be the forgotten student where you run into them in the supermarket and they're like, "Hey, Mrs. Smith," and you're like, "Hey, buddy." Like, "Oh yeah, you were my student in 2004." With you because I guess I had that feeling.
It's not even bad enough that it's going to stand out for bad 2 years from now. It really is just going to disappear.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. We had I'm going to just, you know what? We do it every week. We do this. We do Fight Night this and UFC. I'm just going to call it by the fighters' names. So unless it's a numbered one, that's easy, numbered pay-per-view. But so we're going to call this UFC Fight Night Holm versus Aldana. In the main event, we had former UFC bantamweight champion Holly Holm taking on Mexican sensation Irene Aldana. This was an absolute, what's the word I'm looking for? Absolute perfection? I don't know, I want to say perfection, but, you know, Holly Holm absolutely won every minute of every round for 25 minutes. She got a clean sweep on all three judges' scorecards. I think it was 50-45 across the board. Holly Holm looked really good. Irene Aldana did not. This was her first UFC main event. It was originally not supposed to be the main event. The main event was going to be Thiago Santos versus Glover Teixeira, which I think has been scheduled twice now, being rebooked the third time. But these girls jumped into the main event. I don't think there's that much to talk about. If you had to fight Holly Holm, like the one way, okay, I think my brain is not working tonight because I watched someone not use their brain, and that was Irene Aldana. And I don't want to sound super harsh, but change your game plan. Like it didn't work in the first round, didn't work in the second round. Like by third and fourth, fifth round, like try something else. Like. She just kept chasing Holly Holm, did not cut off the cage, got picked apart from range, and then occasionally taken down. Like, what else is there to say?
There is really nothing to say. I mean, you summed up the post-fight scouting report on Aldana right there. That we're done. All I'd say is let's not take anything away from Holm. On a night that we just saw Germaine de Randamie get the first submission win of her career, this will fly a little under the radar, but Holm is another fighter in her late 30s who continues to add wrinkles to her game. I mean, she's never stopped developing. She's never stopped getting better at the things she was not as good at, and she always fights a pretty smart fight. Holly Holm does not have many giant brain farts. She will fight her best route to victory, even if it's not always sensational to watch. Yep. Against Megan Anderson, she was happy to take her down. If Raquel Pennington wanted to keep forcing the clinch and losing those clinch exchanges, Holm's like, okay, I'll take 3 rounds from you. It won't be exciting, but if you're going to give that to me, I'll take it. If Aldana wanted to spend 5 rounds chasing someone who was just had better footwork and just chasing her and not being able to cut off the cage, and Holly just kept pot-shotting her late in the fight, started taking her down. She's always had an underrated takedown and ground game. Then she's going to take what you give her. Like this was, you flirted with the word perfection. I would say it was the most Holly Holm fight I've ever seen.
Other than obviously the Ronda Rousey fight, this was probably her best performance. There was definitely, you know what I should have said? This was a pillar to post performance, as in she won every second. You know, everyone knows what I mean by pillar to post. What you said, Holly Holm kind of said in her in-cage interview with Dan Hardy, and when she was saying it, I was like, she's telling the truth. She's not one of these ones who, like, you know, people have these talking points that really don't fit. Like, she was saying, I'm like, yeah, that's actually right. Like, Holly Holm came into MMA, and it was, the really extremely established boxer. Then it was like, whoa, actually, no, she has a good kicking game to the point where maybe her kicks are better than her boxing. Then she mentioned, and then suddenly she had a good clinch game, and now she's a takedown artist on top of it. Like, she's getting really good, and you made a good thing. You made a good point when you said she always has a good game plan. I think about the Chris Cyborg fight. Now, Chris Cyborg obviously beat her pretty clearly. She was outmatched, outgunned, out skill set, like check every box. Chris Cyborg has her beat, but she still tricked some people into thinking she won because. No, I'm not one of them. I thought it was very decisive, but there's people I respect. Like one guy I respect, I'm not going to say him out because I don't want to embarrass him, but he scored the fight for Holly Holm. I teased him for whenever that fight was. But he got Holly. So she had the game plan of, okay, I get in this range, I'm getting destroyed, so let me eat way outside and just throw more punches than this person will, not get hit, not really hit, and just try to trick the judges. And if I remember, the scorecards were a lot closer than than they should have been. As for tonight, I actually thought, you know, Holly Holm gets a lot of hate for her, what I like to call air punching. You know, she's not Caitlin Chikagian with it, but she could be pretty bad at like just punching in that space. But I thought her performance in this matchup, I thought there was moments where I thought she was like actually like attacking, like chasing, and she was pulling Aldana into a punch, and she was attacking very effectively this, you know, blitz in, get out game. And I think she was actually more aggressive than usual.
I would agree, and I think she realized that Aldana was biting on pretty much anything she threw out there. So again, you know, fought a smart fight. She gets flack for the shadow boxing aspect, but I don't think it's entirely fair.
Yeah, no, especially not this one. She did land a lot. I think they said it was the most significant strike she's landed in a match, and that is significant because this is not like her first 25-minute fight. She's been in a bunch of them. I mean, she's almost her whole career had been 25-minute fights. I want to talk about Irene Aldana. So, I don't know. Obviously, she had a game plan. It didn't work. She didn't adjust her game plan. I don't know if her corner had plan B, C, and D. I don't know who to blame. It's probably a little bit of both. Maybe the corner gave the right advice and she didn't execute it. But this, if I'm the corner man of Irene Aldana after the first round, this is what I'm saying. Stop chasing her, stand your ground, and let her come at you, and then throw a bigger combination than she throws at you. That's how I think you could have beat Holly Holm. She did not do that. She just got pulled into Holly Holm's attack over and over and over again. Do you have any different, like, what would you think she could have done?
No, I mean, I'm not a coach or a trainer, and even if I were, I wouldn't be her coach or trainer. But I found myself thinking that same thing by about the end of the third round. And if it wouldn't have won her the fight, it at least would have given a different look. Because again, by the end of round 3, you knew what round 4 and 5 were going to look like. Nobody was getting knocked out, and Holm was just going to keep piecing her up at that same distance with Aldana just running at her and past her. So, yeah.
So she needed the fight. Holm needed it all the way out or all the way in. Irene Aldana this is why I picked Holly Holm to win. It was one of the ones I was actually pretty confident about. I'm not getting into my picks. I did okay. I didn't do great. But that pocket area is where she needed it. So the mid range to pocket where she had to be, which is why I felt like you needed Holly Holm to come to you, and then when she gets in that range, you got to attack. And I don't think she did that. I think it was a very poor performance. Yeah, I don't think like the division is so shallow, so I don't want to say this is like a crippling loss because like one win you could be right back in it. But I feel like the marketing behind her, not that she got a lot of marketing anyways, but when the UFC has their marketing team on Monday, I don't think they're going to be throwing a lot into Irene Aldana. Like, I think her next fight is going to be buried way down in a prelim.
I'm with you on that one. It helps that she just completely wasted Ketlin Vieira, who it looks like she's probably getting back on track now. So, she'll always have that in her back pocket, but she needs a win badly her next time out, and it needs to be a win that looks different than she looked on Saturday.
Before we move on, because this card is not the very sexiest card. It's not loaded. Ranking sense, there's not much to talk about. So let me ask you this question. Before the fight, who do you think the UFC was rooting for? Because you have Holly Holm, who has that win over Ronda Rousey. She's definitely more recognizable. She's actually one of the bigger names in the sport in general, definitely females. She actually might be the biggest female name in the UFC right now. But she's lost to the champion. She's got a million title shots. She doesn't, the UFC's been trying it seems like forever to get that Mexican Hispanic market, to get that, one. Now you actually have someone from Mexico, not these guys who have Mexican descent, but actually a Mexican fighter born and raised in Mexico. You have that side of Aldana, the new person. Who do you think the UFC wanted to win?
I think a lot of times the UFC has one where they're definitely hoping, fingers crossed. But this one, I think that they probably saw positives they could pull out of either outcome. The real problem is that whoever won this fight was, a likely next matchup for Jermaine Durandamy, who I know they just wish would probably go away.
Yeah.
So if there was any tiebreaker, it's, well, which one of these two is more likely to knock off the troublesome Dutch woman?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to pause on who they fight next, but I think we're both going on the same route. What I want to talk about for a second is I feel like same thing. Like, I felt like the UFC could really twist the outcome any way they wanted to make it into a positive, except how it went down. Like, I think they were rooting for a finish. If Irene Aldana gets a knockout, then there you go. She might be skipping Jermaine Durandamy. She might be fighting for the title. If Holly Holm gets one of her high kick knockouts or get a quick submission, same thing. Holly Holm's back. This is a girl who beat Ronda Rousey, a boxing champion, all that, former champion, all that stuff. But to have kind of a fairly boring decision where it's not very competitive, but it's not like it's not the Casey Kenny fight where it's exciting to watch someone beat the hell out of the other guy. Excuse me. I think that's a problem, but I also think they probably heading into the main event, they probably was rooting for Irene Aldana when Juliana Pena lost, because there's nobody left for the champion. Like, Amanda Nunes has already wiped out the division. You probably had two people left for her to face, Juliana Pena and Irene Aldana. And with Pena losing early in the evening, you kind of just had Aldana. And now that she lost, like, Amanda Nunes' next match is probably going to be a rematch. I have another thing I'm going to talk about later that might put a wrinkle into it. But let's do that. You just mentioned Holly Holm possibly facing Jermaine Durandamy. If you're matchmaking, is that the match you do?
Yeah, I think it is. It doesn't sound like a sexy fight.
No.
That's not what Holly Holm is at this point. She got the reputation of becoming this head-kicking death machine when she started in MMA, but when you look at those fighters, they weren't UFC quality fighters. When she runs into a UFC quality fighter, unless it is someone like Rousey or or Betch Correia that doesn't know better than just to run straight at her, what you get is you just get a very straightforward, like well executed decision. That's what it looks like when Holly Holm wins now against good fighters. And de Randamie, unless you blunder into a guillotine, you're going to get a lot of the same. They're both very sharp strikers who don't have an abundance of knockout power unless you run into their power.
Yeah. Yeah, I would go with that fight too. I definitely agree with you when you said that it's not going to be too attractive to people. I could see there's a little bit of backstory with the late, one that was for a title, for the featherweight title of the world the first time. There was those controversial late punches by Germaine de Randamie, very close decision she got. Some people thought Holly Holm won. I don't, but a lot of people thought Holly Holm won, especially when you throw in that they probably should have been points taken for the illegal strikes. I could see it headlining a fight night. It's definitely not going to headline a pay-per-view like it did that time. Like it did. I think it was the first card in Brooklyn history, right? Not New York City, but I think it was when they went to Brooklyn. I'm pretty sure that was the first fight to be held in Brooklyn, which is a market that they want to be in. That's a big thing. Anytime you're in New York City, not just Madison Square Garden, but anywhere in New York City is usually a big deal. I'm pretty sure that was the first one.
UFC 208, I think you're right.
Yeah, let's talk about Aldana real quick. We both said it was a very poor showing. But her next match still matters so much because of how shallow the division is. I'll go first this time. The first name that came to mind was Aspen Ladd. She's the winner of their matchup would be right back in the title hunt. If Aspen Ladd beats her, Ladd might be the title challenger next for Amanda Nunes. What would you do with Irene Aldana?
I actually like that. Anyone else that I was thinking of is further down the ladder, like a Julia Avila type. So
yeah.
But I actually like the Ladd one because, she had the one loss, but it was kind of a freaky loss.
Yeah, and it might have been a little bit of an early stoppage. Like she did have.
Yeah.
To me, Nolan King said this once, and I've always thought about it. I thought it was a great analysis. He talked about the pendulum, like a pendulum swings, and it's like in a range, and it's like right at the okay but early pendulum, and then you can do the other way where it's okay but it's late. That's how I kind of felt about that one. Can we do this for once? Can we skip the co-main event and talk about Germaine de Randamie and Julian Pena? Because I feel like it fits. So, I don't want to go into the co-main event and then come back.
It should have been the co-main event anyway.
Yeah, that could have been like a theme of the night. The bantamweight division, the women's bantamweight division. That could have been, Well,
and I'll have a question for you later in the show, but I'm going to lead with just saying that the two women's bantamweight fights in this card, out of all 11 fights, were the only two that felt like they belonged on the UFC main card. Absolutely. The rest of these were prelim fights at best.
Yeah. I still can't believe Carlos Condit didn't get just because of his name value alone, didn't get, other than the women, the only thing anybody else is talking about is Carlos Condit. So we're going to skip the co-main event. We're going to go back to it in a second. One of the main cards was Germaine de Randamie, former UFC featherweight champion, the inaugural women's featherweight champion, never lost her title. She relinquished it versus former Ultimate Fighter winner Juliana Pena. Fun fight, back and forth contest until the third round, where nobody predicted this. And a lot of people predicted Germaine de Randamie to win. I know I did. I think you picked her too to win. Nobody on planet Earth was picking her to submit Juliana Pena. She did with an extremely tight guillotine. Actually put Juliana Pena to sleep with it. The narrative was striker versus grappler, and that's not that's like a lazy narrative. I feel like striker versus grappler gets thrown out there a lot, and it's just kind of lazy. Like this case, it actually fit. If it stayed on the feet, Germaine de Randamie was going to win. If it went to the ground, Juliana Pena should win. And Juliana Pena, we saw Germaine de Randamie against Amanda Nunes do very well on the feet, but then kept getting taken down. We saw the first round, Germaine de Randamie hurt Juliana Pena with a punch, was hammering away. Julian Pena bit down on mouthpiece in the second round. We were able to close the distance, get some takedowns. Jermaine Duranamy really struggled to get up. Then the third round, Jermaine was having success from the outside. Julian Pena finally closed the distance, and we're like, oh, she's going to get the takedown, but she's going to do enough to catch up from what Jermaine Duranamy did. Instead, Duranamy jumps on a guillotine. To me, of everything on the card, this was the most exciting part of the whole night.
I would say so. Yeah, it was. And credit where credit's due. This was not just a slop guillotine. It was expertly applied, like nice setup. She got it in there deep, fast. And then partly due to Pena's kind of failure to react quickly enough, I didn't seem to understand how much trouble she was in. Maybe underestimated Duranamy's ground game, but by the time it looked like she was doing anything about it, she was twitching.
Yeah. So Jermaine Duranamy. So I'm going to ask you that. I want to follow up on that because you said two things. You said like it was well placed. It was very well. I totally agree with that. But you also said Pena didn't react to it. Which side do you look at? Are we looking at Jermaine Duranamy, who's developed a ground game, and now if she gets a little bit of a ground game, she's an extremely good fighter if she has a little bit of ground game? Or is it Julian Pena had such an advantage on the ground that she ignored Jermaine Duranamy, did not think she was a threat, and that's why she got caught?
This sounds like a cop-out, but it really does feel like a little bit of both. I have the feeling that Pena just kind of disregarded the danger. I think she might have just thought, okay, this is just her strikery way of kind of countering, the takedown, finding a way to get back to her feet, and didn't realize how tight it was. Because us looking from the camera angle from above could see, oh man, this thing is deep. And Pena kind of down there with her head under her armpit and working on that leg might not have realized how bad it was until she was like, oh man, I'm starting to black out. But Duranamy looks good. The whole problem is, who has she lost to?
Yeah.
In her entire UFC run.
Yeah. Yeah. So to answer your question, to answer my question I asked you, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I'm not even saying it's a little bit. It's more of like, I don't know. Like, I'm hoping it's Jermaine Duranamy has developed a ground game.
But the thing is, even if she has developed a ground game, she's 7-2 in the UFC, and she's lost to Amanda Nunes, and that's it. Twice. Yeah. Is she going to guillotine Amanda Nunes? No. Is her guillotine going to stop Amanda Nunes from doing what she wants? No. So even if she's improving, and becoming a more complete fighter as she pushes 40, she's already our number 2 bantamweight. And there is a huge gulf between number 2 and number 1. So really, this is just like, watch out rest of the 135 and 145 divisions. Because she's probably also the second best 145er in the UFC if she wants to be.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something that might surprise you. So Conor McGregor had 2 belts he had to give up. He was forced to give up 1. Henry Cejudo, same thing. Daniel Cormier, same thing. Amanda Nunes is the only champion that they've allowed to carry 2 belts. I actually think it would be a good thing for the UFC if Amanda Nunes gave up the featherweight title. And I also think it'd be a good thing if Jermaine Duranamy went back up to 145 and there was, like, Jermaine Duranamy just ran the 145-pound division.
I mean, I'd be fine with that. The thing is, I think Nunes has only been allowed to do this because one of the divisions is 145, and people who actually want to fight there and are any good are so few and far between. I mean, the UFC ran a whole season of Tough trying to fill that division with people, and all the decent fighters from that show dropped to 135 immediately.
I know. I've been saying this for a long time. Like, why haven't they signed every 145-pound woman that has a pulse just to have a division? And if you sign 20 of these, maybe one of them actually, like, you find one like you didn't know about. It's funny that Bellator seems to be signing more featherweights than the UFC. It makes no sense to me at all that they have not signed. Like, I'm not saying UFC level. I mean, everybody. You're 145-pound female. All right, you're in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a possibility just because Nunes is way too big. But if Nunes had one belt at 125 and 135, they would have made her choose within like 6 months because both those divisions are too busy to be held up. Like, this is only even being allowed to happen because one of the divisions is featherweight and she already beat Cyborg.
Yeah. See. I still think it'd be more exciting if Manny Nunes gave up 145, and you had the Jermaine Holly Holm fight, like rematch at 145 for the title. Like, just do it again. I think they'd bring a storyline. So we both said Jermaine Durandamy will face Holly Holm most likely. I think it's also one of those, you have two people that are probably the next two in line for Manny Nunes, who Holly Holm was kicked her head off, and Jermaine Durandamy lost twice now. I think it's like, at least you kill one of them by having them face each other. Then you still have one problem. Julia Pena, I almost thought about matchmaking her, but I can't. I mean, she was out with the leg injury for a while, then she had the mother thing, and then obviously COVID has put everyone on the shelf. She's still 31, so there is still something there, but I feel like we've missed the opportunity with her. Am I wrong?
I don't know, and I don't know just because she's fought twice since she came back from that 2-year layoff. She beat Nico Montano in kind of it wasn't a fantastically exciting fight, and then she fought Durandamy. I mean, she is the woman who definitely beat Jessica Ai and Kat Zingano, both of whom were very, very good and highly ranked at the time, but that was like 5 years ago at this point. I don't know what we have with Juliana Pena right now.
Yeah.
It's not even like some other people in this card where I can tell you, hey, whether they won or lost on Saturday, they're on the tail end of their career. Their best days are over. With her, I literally don't know. And I'd like to see her against someone in that 11 to 20 range.
Yeah.
Because anything lower is an insult. I mean,
sure.
She beat Montano and Zingano, both of whom were like championship level fighters, and she's lost to Jermaine Durandamy and Valentina Shevchenko. The worst of whom, Durandamy, might be one of the 15 or 20 best women fighters of all time.
Yeah, I mean, she lost to Shevchenko, and it is what it is. And that was, like you said, a long time ago. But her last two fights, I don't think she looked good in either one of them. That said, she's still probably top 5 in the division for me. I know not a rate consensus because she's been out and she only had one win in so long. But just from a talent sense, she probably still is. I can't get excited for her anymore. I don't know. Speaking of not getting excited, how can you not get excited for a showdown between Yorgan De Castro and Carlos Felipe?
Dude.
This fight was terrible. Carlos Felipe threw more punches. I felt the difference in this fight. Why I think it was obviously a clear decision for him. He was throwing to win rounds, and Yorgan, in my opinion, was throwing to end the fight. And that usually doesn't work out for the guy. The guy who looks for the knockout usually doesn't get it. And Felipe was just so much busier. And then Yorgan De Castro tied himself out so bad that the third round, all he wanted to do was clinch and try to win the third round just by leaning against Carlos Felipe. Credit to the referee, I don't remember who it was, who tried breaking him every 15 seconds. This fight is terrible. I don't even want to talk about it. What do you have to say?
It was terrible. Like, I've got nothing for it. Like, forget it.
I mean, these are low-level UFC. I mean, like, Felipe won. Like, he's going to lose his next fight. Right?
Yep.
I mean, all right, let's move on. A guy that a lot of people are talking about, absolute insane athleticism. He's fun, and that's Kyler Phillips. He went against Cameron Else, and Cameron Else's first fight in the UFC. He took it on very short notice. There was like some trash talk in between these two. I know there was some kind of backstory. Kyler Phillips just ran right through him and then started taunting him when he was down. I feel the same way I feel about the last match. Like, I don't have much to talk about it because this was just an absolute mismatch. This is a good UFC prospect, a guy that has a future in the UFC, and Cameron Else that one day is going to tell his kids that he was in the UFC.
I think that pretty much covers it. It's a shame because the fight between Phillips and Dana Batgarel, the Mongolian guy, that was originally scheduled, I would have heavily favored Phillips, but that would have been a chance to style on somebody who at least appears to be a UFC quality bantamweight.
Yeah.
I mean, this was nothing but a paycheck, basically.
Yeah, I like Phillips. I mean, he's 2-0 in the UFC now. He looked good in both those matchups. Didn't beat the highest level of guys, but he's exciting. Like he's not going to win a UFC title, but he's going to be fun to watch because he kind of throws caution to win. Looked fantastic this one. Before that, a guy that I really liked on the Contender Series, one of the guys, did not have a great, even though he won his matchup, did not have a great showing in the Contenders. But when I watched tape study him before him, I was very impressed with him, and that's Dusko
Todorovic.
Yeah, I'm so high on him I can't pronounce his name. Todorovic took out Daquan Townsend. He won by second round TKO. To me, he hasn't been really tested. I mean, he's got a win over against Michel Pereira, so he's beat really good guys. He doesn't have like a terrible. I mean, he's 10-0, but it's not one of these ones where he's just beat tomato cans. Like Teddy Ash is pretty good. Obviously, Michel Pereira, Alexander Popek is a good prospect. That said, there's some things I hate. Like he's going to get himself knocked out by the way he does this. Lean your chin out, try to hit me, and I'm going to slip that and then crack you with a bigger punch. That's not going to work against some people. Like someone's going to hurt him bad.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am very excited to see him keep fighting. I liked the way Sherdog preview writer Tom Feely put it. He said that Todorovic had passed the IQ test that is Michel Pereira. You know, I did like that, but I agree he has some holes defensively, and I think I need to see him again because this is almost unfair to say when you're fighting Daquan Townsend, who is just ginormous, but Todorovic looked small.
Yeah.
Against him, and especially in the middleweight division, I probably shouldn't put too much stock in that, considering that some very undersized looking guys have had good success there, like Whitaker, obviously, and Gastelum. But
I mean, Adesanya is kind of undersized. I mean, he's tall and lanky, but he's muscle wise, he's not a hulking guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he weighs in at like 183.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I should probably just get that out of my head and just forget about it, especially when it comes to the 185 division. But that's pretty much it. You know, he had some defensive lapses, but he looked fantastic. Again, I just need to see him against a UFC quality guy because Townsend is not. So
yeah. Well, there you have it. That was probably the quickest we've ever done a main card. We'll move right on to the prelims. I almost said the biggest name on the card, but that's probably Holly Holm. But one of the biggest names. Most people know who these, even casual fans know who Carlos Condit is. Carlos Condit finally got back on the winning ways as he defeated. I'm not even giving Carlos Condit a proper introduction. I mean, former UFC interim welterweight champion Carlos Condit defeated former Ultimate Fighter winner Court McGee. This was Carlos Condit. He snapped a 5-fight losing streak. This was his first win since 2015 when he beat Thiago Alves. Okay, he's better than Court McGee. I don't feel much better about Carlos Condit than I did. So let me pull back the curtain a little bit. I picked against Carlos Condit. I thought I didn't trust his chin, but I didn't trust his output. If you're gonna lose to 2020 Carlos Condit, let me say this right. If Carlos Condit's gonna win, he's gonna need to. There's certain ways he can win, and probably the most obvious is have a slow-paced, range kickboxing match, and that's exactly what Court McGee did. But that's not how Court McGee normally fights. He normally fights making the guy fight off his back foot. Even Sean Brady, he did that too. A very good prospect who I think both of us like. And, he's an output guy who's going to make it a dogfight no matter what. Instead, he stayed at range and was slower, less athletic, which has kind of always been Court McGee. Even when he was winning the Ultimate Fighter, he's always been the slower, less athletic guy, but he wins by volume and grittiness. He didn't have any of that in this fight. And
nope.
Carlos Condit just picked him apart his range. Of course, the Twitter world is going crazy about Carlos kind of winning. Everyone's matchmaking him. He's back. He's this and that. Like, I still see slowing guy. I think he was a little faster than I thought he'd be, but, slowing. I still have question marks about his chin, which wasn't tested. I am still 100% on Carlos Condit is done. This would have been a nice moment to retire and win. That's not what's going to happen. I'm assuming you're in the same camp as me.
I thought he looked better than he has in a couple of fights, but he is in no way back. No. And I say that as someone who will be mentioning him later when we get to the Bulls and the Bears. But despite what I say in that segment, he is not back in any meaningful way, as like a contender. Like, no. If he doesn't want to retire, and of course he doesn't want to retire, they never want to retire, the way forward is towards similarly shop-worn, exciting fighters from his same era. I don't know if you were headed towards matchmaking yet, but
we can give me
Matt Brown. Yeah. If they weren't like still training together, I would say give me Donald Cerrone. If you want him to get hurt really bad, give me a Lawler rematch. Yeah. But he shouldn't be fighting anyone within smelling distance of the welterweight top 15.
See, I actually don't know if he gets hurt really bad against Robbie Lawler because I feel the same way about Robbie Lawler right now. Someone said this recently. I don't remember, so I apologize which podcast I was saying, but it was like one of the most oh my God, this totally just sums up MMA. He goes, there'll be one time where your favorite fighters you don't want to watch anymore. And Carlos Condit has paused that for a second, but that's where the tape is rolling to. Like, there's a year from now, we're going to be saying, like, please, Carlos, stop fighting. I think about, like, when Justin Gaethje fights, we all love watching Justin Gaethje. He's the most saving fighter. But a day's going to come where we're going to be like, oh, God, Justin Gaethje, please stop fighting. I mean, we did it with Chuck Liddell. We did it with BJ Penn. Like, the list goes on and on and on and on. Like, just get guys go out on top, or go out when there's still something left. I really wish Carlos. I mean, he said it. I'm not going anywhere. He did all that, and I'm back. Feels good to be back. And it's like, oh man. As far as matchmaking for me, I don't mind the Matt Brown fight. I know that was recently scheduled. That probably would be the fight that they put together. I thought of James. Oh my God, what's his name? James
Vick?
James Vick. Yeah, James Vick. Kind of a name, a guy who's also been on a big losing streak. His chin is also falling apart. Like, that's who I would do him. Maybe a Tim Means or something like that. Like, definitely not anywhere near top 15.
Man. Guy. Tim Means, get that old Albuquerque, like, crosstown rivalry
firing
up.
Oh, yeah, I would even think about that. Yeah, the old...
Means, like basically, like, one of the last big names from Fit NHB, and one of their OGs.
Yeah.
Yeah, give me that.
I forget about that. Yeah, the Greg Jackson Fit NHB. Yeah. Anything else to say about this matchup?
Nope.
Yeah.
I picked it for McGee, same as you, and I was wrong, and I'm happy for Condit, but I don't believe in him.
Yeah, I'm like it's one of those ones when you pick a fight off of your mind, but you're like kind of happy that you were wrong. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I'm happy Carlos kind of won. I would have felt much better if Court McGee fought the game plan that I expected him to, and Carlos Condit still won. Like, I'd feel better than like that. I still think someone who pressures Carlos Condit, forces him on the back foot, is going to hurt him bad. Head scratcher of the night, in my opinion, Charles Jourdain and Joshua Kulabau got a split draw. I rewatched this fight because when I first watched it, I thought Kulabau clearly won. Then I rewatched it. I'm like, no, actually, the second one was very close. So I'm okay with either guy winning this fight. What I'm not okay is with the draw. I do not feel like that third round was a 10-8 round for Charles Jourdain. I think if the most dominant round was probably Kulabau's first round. Oh,
I agree.
Hold on, I didn't look. Am I wrong? Was that the 10-8 round, and then Jourdain won 2 rounds? Because I assumed that Jourdain got a 10-8 in the third round, but was I was just maybe Kulabau got.
Well, let me just make dead sure here. Yeah, one of the judges, Michael Bell, gave Kulabau the first 2 rounds, gave Jordan the third round 10-8.
Okay, so
that one, that's bad. The worst one to me is Ahmed Korchi giving all 3 rounds to Jordan.
Yeah.
That's even worse. Like 30-27 is actually the worst of those 3 scorecards.
Yes.
Like that's beyond head scratcher. That's like head bang on the desk.
Yeah, I think I just put that out of my head that actually was a 30-27. Yeah, how do you score the first? I mean, the guy got dropped, almost knocked out, taken down. Kulabau clearly won the first round.
I don't understand. It was as straightforward a 10-9 round as you can get. So
I mean, I'm asking the question. I'm asking the question right now. Could have been a 10-8 round for Kulabau, and if someone who scored it 10-9 for Jordan.
It was closer to a 10-8 round than the third one was for Jordan. I just thought, for me, this was as simple as it comes. I scored the fights 10-9 for Kulabau. I gave him rounds 1 and 2, and I gave Jordan round 3. I could see round 2 going either way, but that's pretty much it. Like the split draw featured 2 unbelievably bad scorecards.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like even though in the record books this is a draw. Oh, let me back up. How did you score the fight? I scored it 29-28 for Kulabau, but when I rewatched it, I'm actually okay with anybody who scored it for Jordan.
I scored it 29-28 Kulabau. I gave him the first and second rounds, and I gave Jordan the third. I haven't rewatched it, but I remember round 2 being close. So if I rewatched it and felt that it could have gone the other way, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Having said that, I'm not going to rewatch anything from this damn card.
Yeah, so the reason why I rewatched it, I'll tell you why. I was doing something while this fight was on. So I was like, I don't know if I really watched it the first time. So that's why I rewatched it, especially because we were talking about it. So the narrative to me this is while this is a draw in the record books, to me this feels like a win for Kulabau and a loss for Jordan. And what I mean by that is Jordan came in as a huge favorite, a guy that people were starting to get a little hopes with, maybe could make a little run, not be a champion one day, but, be someone that could maybe make it on the main card and, be a tough test for people. And Kulabau was a extremely low level, okay, give a guy a win, get a second loss and be on the way. And I feel like the narrative isn't that way anymore.
It's a shame. This I thought this should have been a win for Kulabau. So it does feel it kind of sucks for him because I have the feeling he's not long for the UFC. Like this was kind of his high water mark. He definitely punched above his weight or, had one of the best performance of his career so far and doesn't even get the W out of it.
Yeah, I just jumped over to MMA decisions, and I want to point this out that we're actually in the minority, that most of them gave the win to Jordan. I think it was 14 people gave it to Jordan, 29-28. 3 people, 3 very credible. MMA Mania, Dane Fox, who's been on this network, and Jay Petrie, who's been on this network, scored it for Kulabau. Both me and you do submit our scorecards. Neither one of us did for this card. We do submit our scorecards to MMA decisions, so we'll call it 14-5. But yeah, we're in the minority on this one. So
which again, fine.
Which I'm okay with. Yeah, I'm okay with you.
I would have been fine if he'd lost the decision or even lost the splitter, because then people scrolling down, looking at his record a year from now, or people in the UFC, like the UFC's matchmakers that are probably juggling 100 featherweights right now. It's one of the most populated divisions in the promotion. It gives a different impression than looking at that draw, because you look at the draw and you're like, oh, that must have been a tie. It was a result of just some bad scorecards.
Yeah, and even if Jordan won 29-28, to me it still would feel like a loss because he was supposed to just run through Kulabau. Before that, we had, I'm really going to butcher this name, but Nasruddin Imavov.
Imavov
beat Jordan Williams by unanimous decision. No controversy, this one, pretty easy. I scored at 29-28. I'm okay with a 30-27. Either way, clear win for Imavov. I feel bad for Jordan Williams, and what I mean by that is Jordan Williams, he's that type 1 diabetic. He can't cut a lot of weight. That's why he had to move up to 185. He's small for 185. And when you have someone who's big for 185, this is going to happen. I feel like skill wise, both these guys are very like equal.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is Imavov is bigger, stronger, and hits harder.
Bigger, stronger, hits harder. And the thing is, even if Williams doesn't cut much weight to get to 185, I'm sure he cut some, and he had to cut it twice in like just a couple weeks because he fought on the Contender Series.
Yeah, that's true.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, good point. That might have had a big effect on him because he did gas out in this fight.
Well, that was my thought. He won the first round and then kind of gassed out, and Imavov just started kind of leaning on him.
Yeah. Well, the first round was close. Like, I'm okay with anybody who gave that first round to Imavov. It was close. It was back and forth. But yeah, I also scored for Williams.
Yeah. So, I hope that he gets another chance in the UFC, and I expect he will. He's fresh off the Contender Series, but yeah, on a full camp, I want to see what he can do.
Yeah, and even though he lost this fight, he kept fighting through. Like the commentator team kept talking about like how durable he is and he'd take the punishment. Like he it wasn't a terrible showing for him, but he clearly lost. The other thing is I didn't like you kind of just talked about it, but he gassed himself out because he was wrestling a bigger guy, and I didn't like that. Like the cornerman was like, "Hey, go out and wrestle him." Like, no, that's actually how he's losing. Like, I didn't like that strategy.
Just assume that you've got a continental Europe, like a Western Europe prospect. You probably can't wrestle. Like,
yeah. As long as you don't go Eastern Europe, you're good.
Yeah.
You should be able to win the wrestling battle. Speaking of international, Loma Lukbukme. When I'm really unsure about how to say your name, I just say it really fast. Loma Lukbukme took out Jin Yu Fry by I shouldn't say took out, but beat her by unanimous decision. Man, like Loma looked good and Fry looked terrible. And Loma is very small. So is Fry. They're both atomweights, but like Loma's small for an atomweight. Like she has no business being a strawweight. Like she gets towered. When Jin Fry, an atomweight, towers you, like that's bad. But what's even worse is like Angela Hill just outmuscled Loma, and Jin Fry, who is like anything you want to say about Jin Fry's skill set, I've never been that high on her, but she is ripped. Like she's ripped. She's in great shape. She's strong, and she was going in the clinch with Loma, and Loma was wrecking her. Yep. And she did not show a lot of. I started feeling bad for Fry because I'm like, there's nothing she can do because she tries to fight a distance kickboxing game, and Loma is way too fast, way too technical, and picking apart. Then when she crashes and gets in the clinch, that might be worse.
Yep.
Fry kept doing an underhook, and every single time, how do I say this without like being a Joe, trying to like sound like I know more than a pro? But I come from a wrestling background. I've wrestled a lot. Jin Fry does not really know how to control an underhook. You really have to stick it way up to the point where like their arm has to. I explain like when you take an arm away from the like body, it loses strength. Mm-hmm. She wasn't lifting it up higher, so that's why Loma was just like every time she was like digging an underhook, she was giving the overhand elbow and punches,
and leaving herself unable to defend it.
Yeah, and I kept saying like, stop digging the underhook. Like you actually would be better doing an overhook. Just I don't know, terrible showing from Jin Fry. She's now 0-2 in the UFC. Loma. I would rather have the UFC scrap 145 instead of 105 division. Like, and Loma might be the champion in that division if they did.
I mean, I'm thinking right now, would I favor her against Michelle Watterson? Would I favor her against Kay Hansen? I'm just thinking of the people who would be likely to bounce back down, and the people that the UFC would probably sign immediately. Would I favor her against Alicia Zapatella?
Yeah.
She certainly could be.
Yeah. I mean, Tisha Torres, I don't know if she's small, but could she get back down? Carlos Esparza is small. I don't think she'd get back down to that weight. I would get down to that weight class, but especially in her age. Kay Hansen's one of these girls that, but she's so young that I think it would be hard for her. Like she's growing. But it'd be more exciting. Like if they had a 105 division, especially with all the people you could sign outside. I think if there is a atomweight division in a major organization, like I can see Bellator doing that first.
Ryzen and Jules have like their various, but they have their various like kind of 108-ish divisions. But the thing is, those are all clogged at the top with these 40-year-old women that are just all stuck fighting each other. And there's a whole another batch of them coming up underneath that are just kind of stuck there. I wonder if more would come over to the States. If there was an actual 105-pound division in the octagon.
Yeah, and I'm even okay with like adjusting it to be 108 or 110. Like I'm okay with that. But yeah, Loma, she's fun. In this match, she was so fun to watch. But imagine her, she's 115. Imagine her against Tatiana Suarez. Someone like, you know what I mean? Like the size difference. They're in the same weight class. Like, there's nothing she can do with that. She's going to be undersized. Anyways, a fight that was buried on the prelims that made no sense to me being buried on the prelims. That was Casey Kenny versus Alateng Haley. Casey Kenny looked like freaking Mirko Cro Cop out there. Like he was in his southpaw stance and just throwing kicks over and over and over again. And Alateng Haley is got an incredible heart. I'll give him that. Like it was painful to watch. The only thing that might be hurting more than Alateng Lee's ribs might be Casey Kenny's left foot.
Seriously.
I don't remember if it was Paul Felder or Dan Hardy, but one of them said it started looking like bag work. Like when have you ever like seen a kickboxer or MMA fighter, someone who's just working on kicks for a whole practice? Like that's what it looked like. He just threw the left kick over and over and over again.
There were several UFC fighters on Twitter who said, well, that was a nice bag session.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll get to him in a few minutes
I
as
think
well.
we
but
both will. Yeah, I think that was
fantastic.
obvious. Yeah, I think he was. I think he's one of the most obvious picks for what we're going to pick him for. I said this last time, and I'm going to say it again. Casey Kenny on the regional scene was a 125 pounder.
Mm-hmm.
He's 29. He probably can't make it anymore. But God, I wish he could. Because I would favor him over some of the top flyweights. Well,
he beat Brandon Royval, and Brandon Royval, I mean, we're all excited right now because he just got matched up with Brandon Moreno. Yeah, like we're all like, oh, dude, that's going to be a banger, and the guy who wins, is rocketing up the top 10. And I mean, Casey Kenny beat him.
Yeah, I mean, he beat Ray Borg. I mean, it was at bantamweight, and that was a very, very close fight. But and that was a bantamweight fight. But that's a guy who fought for the title.
Yeah, handed Manny Bermudez his first loss. I mean, his only loss in the UFC is to Merab, and Merab is just he's gonna wrestle a lot of people down and just squash them.
And don't forget that Manny Bermudez fight was Manny missed weight, so you have Casey Kenny coming up from flyweight. Manny misses weight by like 5 pounds and becomes a 140-pound catch weight. He's so small, Manny Bermudez, and still wins. I like it. I've been on the Casey Kenny bandwagon. I'm still on it. I'm a Casey Kenny. I like watching this guy fight. He's really, really, really good. And the first fight of the night was Luigi Vendermini versus Yasin Ayari. Vendermini knocked out Ayari in 1 minute and 12 seconds. Just caught him.
Splat.
Yeah, probably other than what I said, Jermaine Duranami getting the submission, probably the second most exciting part. What makes this most impressive is Yasin Ayari is a guy that went the distance with Darren Till. Now, I know that was the fight. That was the fight. No, that wasn't the fight. I was thinking that was the fight with Darren Till got hurt now. But he went the distance with Darren. Like Darren Till couldn't take him out, and Luigi Vendermini did. Really good showing from him. What else can you say? He caught him, put him out.
Yep. Nothing else to say about that.
All right, let's get to. So we've covered the entire card. This is probably record timing for us. I don't know if it really is, but I have the biggest cut list in history.
So do I. It's funny that you should mention that. Like, this is where we're going to make up all that time. Hat tip here to my friend, and I believe yours, Jay Petrie, associate editor at SureDog.com. He and I usually talk a lot in the kind of 24 hours immediately after a Saturday night card, just because we're both doing things for the site. So we're kind of bouncing stuff off each other. And he asked a question that I'm going to throw out here.
Okay. But
you and I are about to answer it anyway. He asked, of the 22 fighters on this card, how many are even UFC quality fighters? Oh. With that, how would you like to start with the cut list? Do you want me to? I'm fine either way.
Let me. Sorry. So, Carlos Felipe cannot be cut because he won. I mean, I don't know, but I'm saying. I guess we could cut him, but we're not gonna. But to add to you, that's someone who, in my opinion, is not a UFC level heavyweight.
Well, it's two different questions. Who would you cut, and who is UFC material? They're two different questions. Yeah. But I mean, we're gonna at least brush up against that several times here.
Like Koulibaly's another guy. I mean, like he got a draw, so I'm not gonna cut him. But all right, so I'll start. I'll start with my most surprising. I would cut Yorgan De Castro.
I'm 100% on board. He's on my list.
He's not going to get cut because he just fought in the co-main event and he's a heavyweight and they need heavyweights. But he's had two disastrous performances back to back. The Greg Hardy, and now he was a big favorite against Carlos Felipe. I feel like a rule: if you lose to Carlos Felipe, you should not be in the UFC. Yorgan De Castro is a local guy. He might beat me up when he sees me. But no, I would cut Yorgan De Castro. So we're on this. I think this one's probably a pretty obvious. Daquan Townsend. He's lost 4 fights in a row. He's 0-4 in the UFC. He's not looked good in any of them.
That's the problem to me. It's the same conversation we had about what's his name, the Russian light heavyweight last week. It's not just that he's lost 4; it's that he hasn't looked like he belongs in any of them.
That's right. Yeah.
Stepping up on short notice gets you a long rope, but even that rope is, Daquan Townsend, needs more seasoning.
Yeah. My third one is Yestin Ayari. He won his first fight in the UFC. That was in 2016.
It was against Jim Wallhead, who's really... He's a guy that was on Tough and didn't get a contract off it. If you're British, you were on Tough and you didn't get a contract off it, you're not UFC material. Yeah. And he turned out not to be. And that's Ayari's only win.
And Jim Wallhead got in the UFC because it was a fight night and it was overseas and they needed somebody. He's lost 3 in a row. I would cut Yestin Ayari. And then my final one... And I don't mind. Like, I know when I used to do the cut list with John Franklin, he didn't seem comfortable saying people should lose their jobs. I don't mind it because it's not personal. And it also opens the door for other people, obviously, people that should be in the UFC. Maybe we should do cut this guy, add this guy. Maybe that make us feel better. But I don't like saying this guy should be cut because he's such a great dude. He has a great story. He's been in the UFC for a long time. But it's time to cut Court McGee. Court McGee has lost 3 fights in a row. He's lost 5 out of his last 6. He had a terrible stylistic match. I mean, he fought it the terrible stylistic way against Carlos Condit. He looked slow. I'd cut Court McGee. Do you agree with me or no?
This one's even harder for me than for you because I lived in Utah for over a decade.
Okay.
He's one of the guys that I saw coming up just out of nowhere. Kind of Steve Seiler, a few early Ramsey Nijum fights. Those are guys that I saw coming up in Utah just in these tiny shows. He is the goodest guy. Even the story that the UFC likes to kind of pound into the ground aside, legitimately one of the nicest dudes. But I mean, tough winners get a longer rope as well, just because they were the face of the company at one point.
Sure.
But there are a lot of welterweights that could be stepping in because I live in Texas now and have for over a decade, and I watch a lot of local shows and. Every few shows or, a couple guys a year, I'm like, man, this guy is a UFC quality welterweight, but he can't get there until somebody moves on.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it being someone like McGee.
Yeah, and I think about like Corey McGee, like I don't. Not only is he not UFC level anymore, like I don't think he wins a regional title, like a good. Obviously, this organization, but like a good regional organization, like he doesn't win an LFA title, he doesn't win Titan FC, CS. Like he's bad. But I understand that it's hard to say that because I mean, if Joe Lazon would probably be the same thing here. Like I'm a local guy, I love Joe Lazon, he's a good guy, but yeah, he's getting pretty close to that time too. So that's my list. Do you have anybody else?
Yeah. Jinyu Fry.
Oh,
give her a division or cut her. She is 0-2 in the UFC strawweight division. And beyond that, scroll back. Lost. She beat Ashley Cummins, but she missed weight. Got beaten by Ayaka Hamasaki. She won 2 of the longest fights of all time against Grusander, but that was at atom weight.
I thought she lost both of them too.
And
I thought she lost to Ashley Cummings, but anyways.
Yeah.
Just
I don't. Even as somebody who I feel like I kind of champion both the lighter weight classes and the women's divisions, I'm not looking forward to her next fight. She's taking space that I wish some other strawweight were taking, whoever she fights next, whenever.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't have Jinyu Fry on my list, but you've convinced me. Like, I don't remember the last time she had a good showing. Like, the first win against Ashley Cummings, maybe? I don't know if that was even a good win. Like, what?
It was an uncontroversial win. She definitely beat her.
But
it wasn't an exciting fight.
Yeah.
But
she's not an exciting fighter at all. She's just not.
No.
She's a clinch girl. She's like she's got a little bit of Caitlin Chikagian without the output. A lot of like shadow boxing, and she's a low output girl. She just slows the pace down. Yeah, so we have 5. You've convinced me. So we have 5 people. You have anybody else?
That's it.
Okay, but that's a lot. Like usually we might find 1, 2 to have 5 people. Not a good night.
Hey, here's a stat for you. Again, courtesy of our friend Jay. This is the second fight card this year to not feature a single ranked man. The other one was the last time the Santos versus Teixeira card fell through, just a month or 2 ago.
Yeah. Jay's got some unbelievable stats.
But before that, to find another UFC card that did not have a single ranked male fighter, you have to go all the way back to 2017, like the tough 26 or 28 finale or something.
Wow.
That's how thin it's gotten. Where, this is the era of COVID and people are falling off of cards, but one fight falling off a card, and that was the only ranked men you had.
Yeah. Now, when you say ranked, you're talking about the official UFC rank, not SureDog rankings.
Right.
Yeah, which makes it even harder because with SureDog, we rank Bellator fighters, we rank we rank worldwide, so it's 15 from any. So the division can only have 11 UFC fighters instead of all 15. Well, really, it's 16 because they have the champion 15.
Yeah.
So we've been negative, so let's keep it negative. I'll let you go first. Let's do the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and the Bears is a stock market reference when things are going good. It's a bull market or bull stock when things are going bad. It is a bear market or bear stock. We can pick up to 3 kind of like hockey stars in the night. This is the bad category, Bears. So these are who did not have a good night. It could be a fighter. It could be a storyline, anything. I'll let you go first.
All right. My Bears. In my bottom least bearful spot is going to be Jinyu Fry. She's not looked good in the octagon, and she had ways she could have beaten Loma. With as easily as she took her down in the 3rd round, it just made me think if she had been going for the takedown earlier in the fight, and this is me, armchair coaching, but I can tell you that what she did didn't work. But even if she wasn't getting the takedowns in the 1st round or getting them as easily, maybe Loma would have been the more tired fighter by the 3rd. All I know is that what she did for the first 2 rounds did not work. What she did starting in the 3rd round did work. Michelle Watterson used to be a 105er, and she's carved out a decent resume in the UFC strawweight division. Yeah. And she's done it by retooling herself as a grinder. If all you saw were her UFC fights, you would not call her the karate hottie.
No, that's right.
When you see her just like grinding out Courtney Casey, who's twice her size.
Yeah.
Jinyu Fry needs to do something like that. She needs to retool her game. Because if you're gonna be boring, win or lose, you might as well win, right?
Yeah,
just put the Fitch treatment on people and start taking them down and grinding them out.
Yeah,
like you can't be a 10 strike per round like kickboxer and win against UFC strawweights.
Especially
so Jinyu Fry.
Yeah, especially not someone as talented in kickboxing. You made a great point about Michelle Waterson being a former atomweight and then beating Courtney Casey, who just missed weight at flyweight.
Yeah,
it's like missed, not only is that 2 weight class different, but she missed weight. So that technically would make her a bantamweight. Technically,
it technically makes her like a third bigger than she's like 1 1/3 Waterson's. That's insane.
But Jinyu Fry still might be able to beat Courtney Casey. Go ahead.
Number 2, Juliana Pena. There is no shame in losing to Jermaine Durandamy.
No.
Jermaine Durandamy is Sherdog's number 2 bantamweight. Pena's about number 12 or number 13. However, there's a reason why Durandamy to win was minus 170 and Durandamy to win by submission was plus 2,300.
2,300.
Plus 20. Not even.
I'm going to pause you for a second because some people might not actually know what that means. I am not a big gambler. We've talked about this a million times.
Yeah.
But I think I can explain this. Basically, what plus 2,300 means if you put up $100, you're willing to risk $100. So it means if you put up $100 for Jermaine Durandamy to win by submission, you would have won $2,300. So if
that
you
is
bet
exactly what it means.
If you bet $200, you would have made $4,600. You get it. You do the math.
Yep. Yeah. Like it basically means if you're willing to put up a decent mountain bike, you get back
23 times.
Chevy Malibu.
Yeah. Whatever you bet, you get 23 times it. If you bet $1, you would have won $23.
And the first 2 rounds were back and forth. I believe she won the second round. Third round, she gets touched up a little on the feet, and then on the ground, she blunders right into a guillotine. And we already covered this earlier, but I think it's a mixture of Durandamy being just better than we've given her credit for, and Pena underestimating the risk on the ground. Just it reminds me of Kelvin Gastelum getting tapped out with that heel hook or knee bar by
Jack Hermanson.
By Jack Hermanson,
yeah.
where he's probably going, let go of my foot and let's get back up and start kickboxing again, and not realizing, no, wait, you're in actual danger. He's actually trying to finish you with this. I think it might have been a bit of that, but terrible look for her.
Matt Hughes, BJ Penn, UFC 46 thing where nobody expected BJ Penn's on him. Forget that BJ Penn at the time was a former world champion in Brazilian, but all of a sudden it was like, oh my god, Matt Hughes just got choked out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a bad look for her because she's been back for 2 fights, hasn't looked great in either, and even if 135 has fallen way off, you need to look better than that if you want to climb up the rankings. Number 1, Yorgan De Castro. If you had asked me 9 or 10 months ago, I would have said we're underrating and underestimating this man because he looks kind of short and dumpy and jolly. He's like a 6 foot tall, heavyweight with a gut. And I would have said everyone's kind of sleeping on this guy.
He looks like a custodian.
He looks like a custodian
because he is one.
And I was all about this guy, but 2 fights in a row. Again, the thing is, and I am very slow and hesitant to say this about any fighter, but against Hardy, the problem didn't even look like he was gassed. Just he wilted. He stopped throwing anything when the going got tough. And that happened again against Carlos Felipe. And again, it's just a shame. This is a division where any fighter, the UFC heavyweight division, any fighter is 4 straight wins away from the title conversation. But it's not going to happen for De Castro. And it's not about his game. His kicking game is just shockingly good for a guy that looks like he does, but it's not going to happen. He is my biggest bear of UFC Holm versus Aldana.
Yeah, not a Yorgan De Castro fan. I get to my bears. My number 3 is a guy that I really respect as a commentator. I really respect him, especially as a film breaking down film, and that's Dan Hardy. I don't think Dan Hardy had a good night. And so first of all, he had that terrible new haircut that looks ridiculous. So
just looks like he needs a haircut still.
Yeah, like go back to the mohawk or something, my man. But his in-cage interviews are really bad because you don't have to lie. Like you don't want to be rude to a fighter, but you don't have to lie. When Carlos Felipe says, "I'm a really big fan of yours," you don't have to go, "I'm a really big fan of yours." Like I know you're being a very nice guy. But let's be honest. Like you didn't. I don't remember if Dan Hardy called his last fight, but you didn't know who Carlos Felipe was until this week when you had to do a film study on him.
Can I just throw something in right there?
Yeah.
In that same situation, Anik would have just pivoted and said, "And a lot of people watching tonight will be big fans of yours the next time they see you."
That's why he's the best. Or just a thank you. Like, yeah, thanks, man.
Oh, imagine that. Yeah.
I know he's super nice, and that's just like what you say. But my even favorite is when the fight is extremely boring to the point where they're talking about the third round. Like, I mean, you lost the third round by getting just laid on by Yorga De Castro, and he goes, "I think I should get performance of the night for that. I want $50,000." And then Dan Hardy goes, "I think you should get performance of the night too." like, come on, Dan. Like, you don't really mean that. I love Dan Hardy. I think he's absolutely fantastic commentator usually, but not a good night. Keep it real, my man. My number 2, I'm not going to go too deep in it because you're dead, but Jin Yu Fry, I was going the same thing. This is a former Invicta champion. She gave up the belt in Invicta to come to the UFC. She's now 0-2. Not looking good. But my number 1 bear of the night, and I'm putting 2 people together, and that's just Hispanic MMA, because this is Hispanic Heritage Month or whatever it is. The UFC has been trying to get in the Hispanic market, which seems forever. They had the thing with Aldana and a thing with Julian Ponte. If both of them won, the UFC would have had a dilemma of like who gets the title shot, who's going to be the Hispanic one. They really want to put their eggs in one basket. It probably would have been Aldana because she's higher ranked and she was in the main event. But still, like they would have had a dilemma. Well, they don't have that dilemma because they both lost. They both look terrible. So my number 1 bear is Hispanic MMA. I should say female Hispanic MMA. Let's go to the Bulls. This is the ones that are good. I'll go first this time. This one might surprise you, but my number 1 Bull, Megan Anderson. And what I mean by that is this. There is no one to challenge Amanda Nunes right now at 135. The options are 2 girls he already beat, which means Amanda Nunes' next fight in the UFC will probably be at 145, and it'll probably be Megan Anderson. Now, some people will be like, Keith, that's not a good thing, but she wants to win the title. She probably thinks she can win. She's not going to win. She's going to get smoked. But after tonight, Megan Anderson is definitely going to be the next person to fight Amanda Nunes. So Megan Anderson's stock has risen. My number 2, Casey Kenny. I've already been high on this guy. This guy looks absolutely incredible. This guy comes from a wrestling background. He's supposed to be known as a wrestler. And when my first person I thought of was Mirko Cro Cop, that's a really good comparison for a wrestler. And my number 1 Bull is Jermaine Duranami. To get a submission, you're supposed to be a kickboxer. You dropped her in the first round to show both striking skills and submission skills. Well-rounded game. We talked about how Holly Holm has advanced and added tool sets. Jermaine Duranami is late in her career, at least by age, and she's adding skill sets. I think she won the night, so that is my Bull. Who is your Bulls?
Bulls. From the bottom, I have Casey Kenny as well. If you walk in there as a 4-1 favorite, you need to do more than just win to make this list. He did. That's all that needs to be said. Congratulations, Casey Kenny. Number 2, Carlos Condit. You know what? The flip side of that is when Carlos Condit walked into the octagon on Saturday, his stock was as low as it had ever been. 5-fight losing streak, underdog to Court McGee, and on the prelims for the first time in a 17-fight UFC career. That was rock bottom. Unless he walked in and lost to McGee. So his stock is up. And not just because he won, but because at this point in his career, he's not going to be a death machine anymore. He's going to be a sniper who loses rounds while looking for a game-changing strike or a game-changing submission. That's exactly what he got. I thought that punch that he landed at the bell of the first round won him not only the first round, but the second and third as well. Because McGee was gun shy after that. McGee was not the same afterwards. So I don't think he's back.
Yeah.
But for the first time in probably 3 years, he looked alive in there.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
So what you're telling me is Carlos Condit is like that item you buy at a yard sale that you don't need, you don't want, but finally you're looking like, oh, for that price, I might as well get it.
That's exactly it. And I say this as someone who's, I mean, how can you not be a fan of Carlos
Oh,
Condit?
of course, yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean, in a fight, I didn't want to see either guy lose.
Yeah.
He looked good, and nobody got a year punched off their life. So
yeah, good point.
Then number one, same as you, Jermaine Durandamy. 36-year-old fighters are not supposed to be adding new dimensions to their game, especially 36-year-olds who came to MMA already as a world-class competitor in another combat sport and have always been very open about the fact that they're a part-time fighter.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
This police officer and multi-time kickboxing champion flashed a really good ground game. I'm not going to do it right now because we're like running a pretty nice tight schedule here. But if I sat down with pen and paper and wrote down my list of the most accomplished women like in MMA history, I think I'd probably get to Jermaine Durandamy like surprisingly quickly. She is quietly putting together one of the greatest resumes of all time.
It's funny you said that because I almost did like, where does Holly Holm rank all time for women? I almost, because you're trying to find things to think of, talk of, and I said, well, maybe we'll keep it a shorter episode. But I almost did that. I was like, she might be top 5, you know. So that's funny. Yeah, I'd have to look at Jermaine. She's probably higher on my list when you really dig into it than I'd expect. All right, let's move on to our grade. I'm going to give it a C-. There was nothing that really jumped, maybe even a D+. Like, Jermaine Durandamy getting that submission was fun. You mentioned her being a police officer. I'm a police officer, so I have a natural bias to her. She's like the nicest lady alive. I mean, she called out Amanda Nunes by congratulating her on having a baby. Like the nicest call out ever. But yeah, other than that, there wasn't a barn burner fight. There wasn't any other than the opening knockout. There wasn't any spectacular knockout or anything like that. So C-, D+. I don't know. What would you go?
D. I give this a D, and the only reason I don't give it an F is the Durandamy versus Pena fight.
Yeah,
I mean, after a major pay-per-view, you're always going to have that kind of hangover card.
Of course,
that's just all the other bits and pieces, and then COVID makes it even worse.
Yeah,
but 22 fighters in this card. Mark my words. If we're still doing this show in a year, let's come back, because a year from now, half these fighters will be gone.
Yeah,
it's a card. Mm-hmm. It's a card full of people that are just either have already shown not to be UFC level or are going to turn out not to be UFC level. And we didn't even get a whole lot of bangers out of it. Like, most of the fights were kind of dull. Yeah. Had a terrible decision, some weird reffing. It was just junk. Like, one of the least enjoyable UFC cards of the year for me. I'll give it a D.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to say shout out to anybody who just heard us trash this card for like over an hour and listened all the way this far into the show without saying like, why am I listening to a recap of a terrible event? So you guys if you did make it this far, you guys are the absolute rock stars. Ben, tell the people where they can follow you on Twitter and all that good stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at Benjamin Duffy. You can also find me on Instagram at Benjamin Duffy, I guess, if you want to see pictures of food. And you can find me at sherdog.com, where I write a daily column on this day in MMA history, and then a just variety of other things, mostly memory lane type stuff, just because too many cards these days are like this one.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Keith Shillan MMA. My last name is spelled Shillan. So that's at Keith Shillan MMA. We'll be back next week. We'll be recapping UFC Moraes versus Sandhagen. It's a surprisingly good card. See you guys then.